He cried also in mine ears with a loud voice, saying, Cause them that have charge over the city to draw near, even every man with his destroying weapon in his hand. And behold, 6 men came from the way of the higher gate, which lieth toward the north, and every man a slaughter weapon in his hand. And one man among them was clothed with linen, with a writer's inkhorn by his side. And they went in, and stood beside the brazen altar. And the glory of the God of Israel was gone up from the cherub whereupon he was to the threshold of the house. And he called to the man clothed with linen, which had the writer's inkhorn by his side. And the Lord said unto him, Go through the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. And to the others he said in mine hearing, Go ye after him through the city, and smite, let not your eyes spare, neither have ye pity. Slay utterly old and young, both maids and little children and women, but come not near any man upon whom is the mark, and begin at my sanctuary. Then they began at the ancient men which were before the house. And he said unto them, Defile the house, and fill the courts with the slain. Go ye forth. And they went forth and slew in the city. And it came to pass, while they were slaying them, and I was left, that I fell upon my face and cried, and said, Ah, Lord God, wilt thou destroy all the residue of Israel in thy pouring out of thy fury upon Jerusalem? Then said he unto me, The iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is exceeding great, and the land is full of blood, and the city full of perverseness, for they say, The Lord hath forsaken the earth, and the Lord seeth not. And as for me also, mine eye shall not spare, neither will I have pity, but I will recompense their way upon their head. And behold, the man clothed with linen, which had the inkhorn by his side, reported the matter, saying, I have done as thou hast commanded me.
This is indeed serious. Our very salvation may depend on a proper understanding of this passage. First of all, we must remember that the servant of the Lord told us that Ezekiel chapter 9 is the sealing of the 144,000 saints who are from Israel, from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Ezekiel saw 6 men coming from the higher gate from the north. According to Isaiah chapter 12, verses 12 through 14, this is heaven. This means then that these men are not mortal beings, but angels. And as you know, angels are sometimes referred to as men, according to Daniel chapter 9, verse 21. Furthermore, we know that angels will perform the separation and not man. Notice that one of these 6 angels was a sealing or marking angel. And he was commanded to mark all those who sighed and cried for the abominations among God's people. But those who were not sealed were destroyed by the remaining 5 angels. How sad indeed, brothers and sisters, that this event should have to take place in God's house. May God help us to understand and realize the seriousness of this matter. We need to highlight a few points from this reading. And the first is that only those that sigh and cry for the abominations that are taking place in the church will receive the seal and be saved. Sighing and crying simply means to reform our lives and encourage others to reform as well. You may be wondering if this judgment of Ezekiel 9 is literal. Will God literally slay those who are not sealed? Could this be a spiritual slaughter? Inspiration answers this question in Manuscript Releases Volume 1, page 260.
Study the 9th chapter of Ezekiel. These words will be literally fulfilled.
Ezekiel 9 is indeed a physical judgment that occurs in God's church, and it is not a spiritual slaughter. In fact, there is no such thing as a spiritual slaughter. God's judgments have always been literal. For example, the flood, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and other accounts of God's judgments have all been literal. Ezekiel chapter 9, verse 7 indicates that the slaughter brought to light there is indeed a real physical destruction. It says, And he said unto them, Defile the house, and fill the courts with the slain. Go ye forth. And they went forth and slew in the city. Notice that the courts were filled with literal bodies. This could not be a spiritual slaughter. For more evidence to show that this is indeed a physical judgment about to take place in God's church, let us go to Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5, page 211.
The class who do not feel grieved over their own spiritual declension nor mourn over the sins of others will be left without the seal of God. Here we see that the church, the Lord's sanctuary, was the first to feel the stroke of the wrath of God. The ancient men, those to whom God had given great light, and who had stood as the guardians of the spiritual interest of the people, had betrayed their trust. They had taken the position that we need not look for miracles and the marked manifestation of God's power as in former days. Times have changed. These words strengthen their unbelief, and they say, "The Lord will not do good, neither will he do evil. He is too merciful to visit his people in judgment." Thus peace and safety is the cry from men who will never again lift up their voice like a trumpet to show God's people their transgressions, and the house of Jacob their sins. These dumb dogs that would not bark are the ones who feel the just vengeance of an offended God. Men, maidens, and little children all perish together.
This reference makes it very clear that the judgment in the house of God, according to 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 17, does indeed begin with the church. She also makes it plain that the ancient men, the leaders, are the first ones to feel the stroke of the wrath of God. And notice that the stroke of the wrath of God has never been anything but literal. In fact, our leaders are saying that times have changed and that God is too merciful to visit his people in judgment. By saying this, they are denying the fact that the slaughter is indeed literal. Yet inspiration says it will actually happen. Men, maidens, and little children will all perish together.